Dynamite Download.
Dynamite Download, your home for all positive coverage on all elite wrestling.
Cut a promo like the DMD. They're a very
This is the Symphony Boys.
The Symphony of Five.
Download, you guys. Positive energy. You have a great
January recruitment month for this.
Along, I come along in the.
Well, actually, I did see that, and I was thinking.
John Silver, welcome to the show, John. How you doing?
The cold spray. I'm tired of the cold spray.
I went to Bat to do an interview with those guys. You know why? Because they spread positivity about AEW.
Welcome to Dynamite Download.
man. You know what? And it's Saturday night. I don't know about you guys, but it felt like a big night fight tonight. I love it. Mind has joined the crew tonight. Got the set in the background. So much to cover tonight. SPD,
it's clobbering
Mind,
time.
thanks for coming on tonight, guys. This was an awesome show. Really, really cool that we're going to be able to have a chance to get together tonight and kind of kick back and reflect on a brand new show, a brand new, I think, a whole new era for AEW. And there's a lot, beyond just the matches. But guys, I want to first, before we even get into the matches, what are you guys' feelings just taking away from the whole the theme song of the show? We were chatting about it leading up to it, guys. Mind, I'm going to throw it to you. What were some of your favorite parts of that? I mean, because this definitely felt different from Dynamite to me. It was a really cool. The presentation. What was your favorite? What were some of the key things that stood out to you?
They really went to the lengths to make it feel like a different show. I do agree, and I wasn't sure about the song choice. I mean, obviously Saturday Night, of course, and I got no qualms. It's one of my favorite Elton John songs, but it's like I was just like I got to see how it really
right.
But then right when it started, it's like, oh, okay, I can feel it. This is it's Saturday Night's all right for fighting. They did a great montage for the opening. I do feel like they are distinguishing it from Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
I have concerns about all the brand split talk though, but I do feel like the opening got me pumped. I was ready. Let's do this, and I'm excited because we get another 2 hours of AEW. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like
more than a taste.
We were
more than a taste.
SPD, you and I were talking about it with a buddy of ours, and he was saying, he was wondering about it being a Saturday night show, and then the more he's thought about it, it is a great night for watching wrestling, man. It feels like a good,
St. Water.
Middle of the that a boy. Yeah. We could stay up late. We could talk about it. We could hang out with the fellas. And it definitely felt to me like it was more of like a guy's show. I don't know how to describe it. It was one of those types of things for us hardcore wrestling fans, man. It was really cool to kind of have the big fight feel. This ain't water. This ain't water. I really liked, and we're going to talk a lot of different things throughout the night, but I liked the commentary team. And SPD, you and I were chatting a little bit about it. I know, my back. I mean, Kevin Kelly. I remember when I was a kid. He brought kind of a. He and Nigel kind of brought a different, I think, overall vibe to the show than what I'm used to on Wednesday nights, where. Excalibur is a very talented guy, and he really, really worked. You can tell he's one of the hardest working guys in the business. But he has this sort of constant energy, right? It's just there's a lot of talking when Excalibur is part of the booth, and I felt like these guys let the show breathe a little bit. It was just a little more of a calmness to the show. I like that, and Taz kind of has the knucklehead thing. I don't know. There's a lot of chit chat. There's a lot of chit chat on Dynamite. The commentary team. There's a lot of talk, and I felt like these guys kind of allowed the action to take the center of the show. They complemented what was on television. One of the things I love, bringing in the history of leading up to the main event. They talked about FTR being loyal to Punk throughout all this.
Yeah,
they brought that too. I thought they brought a very a smart. vibe to the overall show. I really liked it. And there's a lot of things that I liked about Collision, but I felt like the commentary switch was really nice. I thought they did a good job on that.
If I could say to your point, it absolutely. This is a first-time commentary team having that much chemistry already. Give them time. I mean, if you look at a lot of the other commentary teams
pairing together,
it took a lot of goes for Excalibur and Taz to even be Excalibur Taz.
Yeah,
it took a long time for them to really gel like they did. But these guys, 6 months from now, they're going to probably be riffing on each other tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, and again,
that's one thing. Like, I thought they didn't have enough energy to start, and then they grew on me. I liked
that calm vibe, though. I liked that.
There was like one point in one of the matches, I think it had to be the Wardlow match, where there was like a big move, and he was just like kind of nonchalantly didn't get excited, and I liked that. Oh my gosh, he threw this.
Yeah,
like not like insane, but the over the top excitement for us at home, it helps us get more invested in the match. Where you get that from Excalibur at times, and Tony Schiavone at times. Or even JR, oh my God, he killed him.
I would agree that there aren't there's not a lot of sound bites from this commentary crew like that, right? But I can appreciate it. I liked it. I'm used to. I understand, like you mentioned, there's always the Joey Styles. Like there's always growing up, you think about these guys who have the big explanations and all those things. But I thought it worked. I thought that the show. It worked because the performers tonight delivered. I thought that, this show, there really was not a point throughout this entire show where I felt like there was a miss. I really enjoyed the entire event. I thought, and even Wardlow lost. It didn't throw. It could have, that could have ruined the night in some nights for me. But I thought it was a lot, and we'll talk about that, Mine. Yeah. I just felt like across the board, it was a really great show. The performers did a really, really nice job in the ring. And there was I don't know, guys. To me, it felt like a very smartly put together Collision. To me, went as smoothly and went as well as you could have hoped for. I think it was the best thing that AEW has produced in a while. A lot better than a lot of the Dynamites that I've seen. I really, really enjoyed Collision. I think that this was, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys about it. So I mean, let's get into it, right? I mean, they kicked
you
off
want to know what
Collision.
makes Daddy SPD's nipples hard? Well, I mean, that's what I wanted to get. I want to hear your scoop on this, Mike, before we dive into matches. I mean, you got Crayfish. One thing I was worried about, not worried, but just kind of anxious and how are they going to distinguish this? I don't want this to be a Rampage 2.0 or a Dynamite 2.0. And I really, from the set to everything, it started off strong, and then the ropes are different. I wanted a little bit, maybe more, but overall, I was really happy. It did totally feel like a different show, and that's what I was really curious to see how that was going to play out. And I agree with you. As much as I like, Daddy Magic's nipples hard and the nonsense, you almost didn't have as much of that comedic stuff that you get out of the Orange Cassidy's. Which is, I think you need to lean into that. Acclaimed aside, we get it. You're kind of rounding cherry on topping of an awesome show when you add them in there.
Of course.
But this was a fantastic show, start to finish, in my opinion, and no misses. I mean, very few promos, and I felt like you get a lot of those in Dynamite, which helps storylines grow.
Sure.
But did it live up to its expectations for you personally, Mind Runner, or where do you sit with now that we digested the show? What you're kind of anticipating, expecting out of it?
I think there were parts of it that actually really impressed me more than I was expecting, and then there were parts of it that I was kind of. But overall, I thought for a premiere show, I give it a high score. I mean, for its first show, and again, this is the first of its kind going forward. I mean, if you see this show again 6 months from now, there's there's already destination watching for everybody. The only thing it kind of really going to your point too about I agree with both of you about the commentary team though, because there were times where it's that would have been the time for you to go, oh my God, what are you gonna do? But that's going to grow with time too. And what AEW does great with its wrestlers, does with everything, is don't judge it by its first debut. it'll grow into it. Look at Britt Baker from 2019. Look at the Dark Order from 2019.
Hobbs.
All these people, eventually it's going to grow. It'll get there. My fear is they got to learn the lessons from WWE about brand split. And if you make it too different from like the product, because to me, AEW is the product. We watch AEW because it's not what we've stopped watching elsewhere. Not mad at people that like WWE, but I hope they don't try too hard.
No, I gotta ask. Do you mind if I jump in? Do you mind if I jump in? Usually,
absolutely.
When we talk brand split, right? Usually, you think roster, right?
Yeah.
It's that's what really distinguishes it. But and I would agree with you that I don't necessarily think there should be a roster split. But as far as presentation and tone and style of the show. Is there a need? I guess AEW kind of maybe is reflecting on that some of the silliness, some of the over the top personas and gimmicks and some of the stuff that is fun about Dynamite, but it has its place and it is very different than when you see somebody like Miro. Right, like when you see the intensity or the realism of a CMFTR match, right? Like that, those guys and Samoa Joe, right? It's hard to go on the same show necessarily to see a Samoa Joe and an Orange Cassidy going back. Like it is. And
do you think though that Orange Cassidy's going to be a different character when he's on? Because they have him in the promos. So do you think he's going to be they're going to pull back his thing? Because the thing I don't want is I don't want to only have Miro on Saturdays. I don't want only Thunder Rosa on Saturdays. And I think they have a huge opportunity to really build storylines between the two shows. Now, as far as I do agree with you, and I see your point about the distinction in the flavor. It's kind of like it's kind of like the Burger King versus McDonald's. I mean, that's a bad analogy, but like, and they even said that Collision, because Saturday night, it's much more geared towards the more hardcore wrestling fans,
and it felt that way. It felt that way, and I think that. Like there is a place for a more serious presentation of pro wrestling. Like, WWE does some things great as far as like stylistically, presentation wise. It looks so crisp and beautiful, their presentation. But it's a show, right? It's a big show. It's a big spectacle. Dynamite kind of feels like, when you have that, like when you have the goofiness of an Orange Cassidy, and when you emphasize the show basically starts off every week with an OC match lately. When you have the over the top antics of, like you talked about, the Acclaimed, and there are some personalities that do feel like they might not necessarily fit a more serious presentation in Collision. Now there are people who could seamlessly go between shows and wouldn't change who they are, and so I see your point, mine. But I really liked from tonight's show that it felt like this is the grittier version. This is wrestling, right? This is the wrestling show. There isn't and there's nothing wrong with like the showmanship of a Young Bucks, right? Like the flips and the acrobatics and all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's so different than some of the stuff that we saw tonight. And I don't know. I think that this is interesting. I think that you're right, Mind. It doesn't necessarily need to be a formal, like this is the serious show, this is the funny show. But if they continue to lean into this, and allow it to, like you said, let it be natural, let it breathe. I like this type of presentation. I thought it just felt like a show where I could see big matches and let the matches shine without all this I don't know. I really enjoyed tonight's presentation, and I think it started off incredibly well with CM Punk coming out. To what you said, SPD, just the crowd reaction to Punk was exactly what AEW needed.
It was hot.
What Punk
Wow.
needed. There's a lot of all the controversy around Punk and what happened at Brawl Out and all of it. Immediately, you look at what happened in his the reaction that he got, and then the promo that he delivered.
Oof.
I mean, that's why he's one of the best, and it's why he is.
Nice.
I mean, there's no argument. This guy absolutely delivered tonight. He, like you said, Mind, he had some lines where you were like, oh man, like he is so smart. And his promos are like, he had some daggers that were thinly veiled shots that we all knew who he was talking about. And he didn't hold anything back. He made shots at Max. He made shots at the Bucks. It was a really well-timed promo. He absolutely hit a home run with it. SPD, I know that you right away, the crowd reaction got you. You had the goosebumps. I know that from talking to you before the show, you were excited to see would they start off the show with a CM Punk promo, and they did exactly just that.
I think you had to, especially with the build, and it delivered. I think he still held back a little bit, even though he, was throwing haymakers left and right and knockout punches. I still felt like there's more in the tank. Just starting off by ripping off the AEW logo, I was like, what are we going to get? This really heel Punk promo, but no, it was well said. Coming and bringing out the belt. Obviously it's in that cool bag there, and so he's got a lot of scores to settle, and it's great for. I know certain markets will get mixed reactions with him, being essentially Team Bucks, Team Punk, in a sense, but it's no dummy. Tony Khan's no dummy to put it, this show, his debut show on this for that. But the promo to kick things off had me jump in, man. I was marking out left and right, and it was fantastic, and it got me excited to see him again and realize how much we did miss him. Right. And it's nice to see the smile on his face too, where he's happy to be back. Doesn't seem forced. It seems like he is excited, and especially what we saw later in the show. With CMFTR. So it did seem like that, and it really does seem like he is focused on settling some scores. And honestly, I'm glad he called out the Bucks. I'm glad he inadvertently called them out and all this stuff, because what if you're not going to do this stuff backstage and man to man and all that? I'm going to air it out until you get. I feel like you have to respond to this.
Exactly.
You can't just sit back, whether you're on BTE or whatever. They need to start planting these seeds slowly. But if you just constantly ignore this that Punk's going to do, he's not going to give up. He's not going to end until I think Punk's smart enough to. He's not going to just.
He'll fan the flame.
Oh, I said my piece and be done.
Right. He'll fan
he's going to keep poking the board.
He knows that there's a vibe
fanning the flame until it's there.
Right.
And then it's going to give us as fans ultimate payoff.
Yeah, he knows that the people out there, all of us fans, we're eating it up, right? We're eating it up. We all want to see it. We all want to see, that inevitably play out on screen, because that's the fun. That's the fun part, right? The actual behind the scenes drama and all that. That's why we're all curious about what will eventually happen potentially with Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa and all that, right? I know that was something you were talking about earlier today. So it's just when you get tastes of the behind the scenes drama, the real life stuff, that's what you want them to run with it. And I thought Punk did an awesome job with that. And again, his line about tell me when I tell a lie, basically he just continued to drop truths. They were haymakers, SPD, over and over and again. Did not back down. And this is one of those promos there are promos, and I know you're built like me like this, where it's you're a big wrestling fanatic, and there are certain promos where you go back and you just want to watch it one more time, and I'm gonna, before bed, I'll go back and I'll watch it one more time, just because it was really smart. Punk had a lot of very intelligent lines in there, and that's one of the things I love about him as a promo guy, is that he's able to consistently as a wordsmith, he's consistently able to go after people in creative ways. He didn't just come out there his shots at the Bucks were creative. I thought they were very intelligently worded, and that's one of the things that makes him unique. I love that about Punk.
My thoughts are, number one, business. This was all business, and CM Punk brings in the money. It was incredibly smart for them to do this in Chicago. And I don't think CM Punk could have said anything differently because he had to say what he said. Because otherwise he would be a watered down version of himself. And not only would his diehard fans not appreciate that, he wouldn't be able to be him.
Yeah.
So he was CM Punk. He had to do that. He had to do that kind of promo. The thing with CM Punk though, and this is you could hear the crowd. Most of them, I mean, in Chicago were cheering him. There was a big positive CM Punk atmosphere. Is he going to get that everywhere else? Probably not. But he's already kind of set the stage for that anyways. He's commenting about you can boo me, you can cheer me. It doesn't matter. So, and that's what he needed to do.
He did address that. Good point. He did address that in the promo.
The all-in brawl in Scrum. And again, there's a lot that he's not legally allowed to say, and there's a lot that the all-in brawl where the whole mess with the Elite started.
Got it. Yep.
Getting bit by Ace Steel and all that.
Yeah.
I am less disappointed in CM Punk with that than how he handled himself at the Scrum. Now he's explained at ESPN that he was already hurt. He already knew he was injured. He was grumpy. He was tired, and he let a lot of the hearsay get to him, and so he acted incredibly irresponsible and unprofessional. I don't think he owes an apology. I don't think that's who CM Punk is. But he also, there are people that used to be his fans that are not, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I've cooled on him. That doesn't mean that I don't recognize his popularity and character that he is. And I think at the core, he's business. I think part of my disappointment is there needs to be some much better communication in AEW, maybe with Will Washington and a few of the other new hires, they'll get that. But I as a cooled CM Punk fan, I don't want to say I'm not a CM Punk fan. I'm a cooled CM Punk fan ever since that whole all-in mess.
Yeah.
This worked as best as it could. And this was smart. Bring him out right away. Talk about the elephant in the room as much as you legally can. My only issue is with CM Punk, he always blurs that line between kayfabe and shoot. That's fine. But then don't bitch about Hangman doing the same thing. Don't be upset if you think Hangman's doing the same thing or somebody else. And that's my issue. But that doesn't stop me from enjoying the CM Punk match. And we're going to talk about the main event. Holy crap, that was phenomenal.
Right. But as a CM Punk fan, followed him, I'll say, admittedly, I think Punk is a long history of being able to kind of dish it out more than he can take it sometimes when it comes to brutal honesty and stuff like that. I think that's a fair critique on him, right? But that doesn't take away the fact that he's really good at this. He is very good at dishing it out, right? So
he is.
So that said, I'm with you in that there is no denying that he's special. I mean, he is. There's no argument about it. The guy, especially in today's landscape of pro wrestling, he's a special talker, and he knows what he's doing. He gets this business very, very well, and I think that is something that I think he can play a role in AEW. As far as, guys, we got to remember, it is a business. They have to make money. They have to be able to be profitable in order to continue to do what they're doing. And I think that, sometimes that might rub people the wrong way, but I think it's a necessary thing because we gotta remember, guys, AEW is still an upstart company, right? This is not like we've kind of gotten used to AEW and we're grateful that they're here, but it's like,
they're not even 4 years yet.
Exactly. We sometimes we take it for granted and we forget that they're still in their infancy stage as a company. And so it is important to have guys like Punk tell you the hard truths sometimes. You can't, like, when you're in the business, so like as Punk points out, you can't be in a protective bubble of people who just tell you, like, when you only hear good things. Sometimes you need to hear the tough truths. That goes
for Punk too. Absolutely.
Punk's very good at that, right? He's very good at giving it.
He also doesn't need to expect to be in that bubble either. And this is less, I think, a Punk elite issue. I think it's a communication issue in the locker room.
See, and I'll challenge you there, mine, because I mean, he lived and breathed in the WWE era where he got a lot of criticism. He had to handle a lot of politics, and the WWE, his path in WWE was not an easy one. And so I think that he did have to hear hard truths. I'm sure and he lived them, going through some of the things that he's gone through there with his injury history and, noted confrontations with management. I mean, some of the stuff was very real. So I don't know. I think that Punk definitely has a thin skin, and he can be quickly triggered. Yeah. And maybe he does need to be a little bit more self-reflective of that. But overall, I think that he could play a pivotal role in helping Tony and the management team there, just like they're doing with Bryan Danielson, right? They're giving Bryan Danielson a platform backstage to be more involved in creative decisions for the company, right? That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. Jericho has been invaluable to this company, but he's only one guy, right? So if you have a Jericho, if you have a Danielson, you have a Moxley, and you have a guy like Punk, right? Whether Kenny Omega and Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson, whether they like that or not, it's best for their company to have guys like this bring what they can for the betterment of the company. And I think that that's what Punk wants to do. I really do think he wants AEW to be successful, right? I think
he wants it his way, though. I think there's some issues there. And if you look at you're right. He had drama at WWE. But who's the common denominator? CM Punk.
We could talk about CM. Isn't this lovely? Literally, we could have this conversation and not even talk about the matches. I know we get to it.
I do want to talk about the match because that was tremendous. Right. But and I don't think it's, and what we don't know, like Tony Khan and CM Punk have been on the phone with each other for years, but way before he even really got CM Punk interested in coming to AEW. So there is a respect there. I think there's also a lot of stuff we don't know about what is being talked behind the scenes, but there needs to be a better communication behind the scenes, because you're right about Jericho and Bryan Danielson, but the locker room respects them as a whole. There's not a whole lot of people backstage that don't like them. Whereas when you have a number of people, both in AEW and WWE, that have an issue with you, and even in the indies, there's where there's smoke, there's fire. Having said that, it's great for business, and if it's going to elevate AEW,
it goes both ways. Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, it goes both ways, right? I mean, like, there's a lot of people who love Punk. You're not gonna. Yeah. He will admit it, and he said it himself. He's not for everybody, right? He will rub you the wrong way. It's okay. He is who he is. He's authentic. He's the genuine. Like he said, he's a $1 Phil, right?
Let's get into some matches.
Genuine article. Yeah, let's do it, SPD. Thanks for wrangling us in. And we're talking about Wardlow and Luchasaurus
stuff because we haven't seen Punk. We haven't seen Punk, Miro, and Andrade El Idolo all since All Out September 4th. So all three of those guys have been MIA for that long together. I looked at the match cards. So in terms of matches, those three guys have not been in the ring since then. So it was kind of a trio's re-debut. But Wardlow versus Luchasaurus kicking things off, the first ever match on Collision. And it's not disappointing.
Great. We should have wore our turtlenecks.
I know.
We should have worn
turtlenecks.
Talk about someone that's influential in the business. But yeah, Christian Cage was a fantastic work he did outside, and what he did after the match. Luchasaurus wins his first or second title in AEW. Yes. Doesn't even get to touch the belt. He's running around like it's his belt, and I think that's just a plan of the seed that we're gonna get of like him holding the belt, Luchasaurus never having the belt, and then ultimately getting pissed off and stuff like that. So I think it's great work by Christian Cage. But man, as much as I wanted, I think Christian Cage is doing fantastic stuff, and he's going to. It's just like we've talked about before, the hot potato belt stuff with TNT and Wardlow. I mean, 3-time champ. Like, I was hoping, man, after that ladder match at the pay-per-view, I was like, okay, man, this is the run, and he beat Taker, 4 nights ago. And then he looks like he's having the upper hand of Luchasaurus, who I've always been a fan of. And then, of course, the interference. That'd be the only way. So I'm happy that this is happening for Christian Cage and Luchasaurus because I do enjoy them both in the pairing. But I'm just bummed of the quick runs that Wardlow's getting. It's like he gets momentum and it's like back to square one. Get momentum, back to square one. It's like, now what? Like, where do you go from this? Like with that, but because he was starting to come, I think, get back into his element and really have some dominant wins and dominant matches, and starting the crowd to get back on his side with the chants and all that. And so,
I mean, tonight it was hot for him.
Now I think, wind has been sucked out of the sails. Like, where do you go from here, Mind Runner, with Wardlow? Like, what would you do?
That's a tough call because I did not see this coming. But when it happened, I thought this was perfect. I thought this was a great move for the Christian Cage Luchasaurus. Because if Luchasaurus lost, then Christian and Luchasaurus both are a joke. But this whole storyline, and I love this whole storyline where it's Christian's belt. Luchasaurus just won it for him. I mean, they got miles of story to play with that, and I think that's like real quick question. I want to ask the Dukes.
Yeah,
who gets more heat, Christian Cage or Don Callis? Who gets more heat right now?
Oh my God, that's great.
Now Don Callis.
Don is as hot as it gets. Yes,
but Christian Cage is number 2 then at least. Right?
I know.
Dude is such a great heel. This is the best Christian I've ever seen, including Edge and Christian, the classic runs. This is the best Christian. He's the turtleneck era is so cool. And I love all this. I love that made me very happy tonight.
Christian is quietly going to have one of the greatest careers of our lifetime. I mean, he really is, man. This guy is incredible. He is so good.
And it's so funny that with all his awesome career moments, this is probably arguably his best because he's just in his element. He knows his role, knows what he's doing. Wardlow, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what their plan is with this dude because I was kind of peeved that they took the belt off of Will Hobbs, but I like Wardlow. But people are starting to call him Wardlow. People are starting to. He doesn't seem like he has a direction, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen with Arn or something was going to happen. He needs a redemption arc. If this was a Marvel movie, this needs to be, he needs to go on a path of redemption and then eventually maybe go back and get the TNT title. But Arn needs to be like Mickey from Rocky and start saying, all right, now you're going to do things my way. And start having him just really push himself.
The hard part, though, is that like Wardlow did try to do stuff like Arn Anderson's way. He bit Luchasaurus' thumb in the match, right? He did stuff. He's trying to do stuff. Like he did clearly follow Arn's lead. Unfortunately, like Arn wasn't there tonight, right? And that did play a huge role because Christian was. I mean, again, like.
Crawling under the ring.
Christian was going. He was insane. He was such a huge part of this match. He was he was more entertaining than pretty much anything you'll see in wrestling. You were so right, Minda. He is so on his game right now. We've talked about it. Even like last year, SPD. This heel turn of Christian has been so good. He's incredible at getting heat. But focusing in on your question about Wardlow. I'll be honest, guys. Like I'm a huge Wardlow mark. He's been he's my favorite guy, and I've been the champion of the Wardlow breakout from day one.
You're right.
And I'm okay with this because I think that, like, truthfully, what more does Wardlow have to do with the TNT title? I mean, you said it, SPD. He's a 3-time champ. He's a 3-time champ. And I don't know how memorable any of those reigns really have been. And I think that's fair criticism. I think that he's had some great matches, like most recently with, I think the Christian match was a good one. But I don't think that it's motivating him to be great. I don't think it's presenting him in a way that makes him feel any bigger or better. I don't think that it's
okay. That's fair.
I don't think that he needs the belt, and I don't think that it's I would have gone a different direction, right, with Wardlow's reign, and I said it after he beat Hobbs, to piggyback off your point, Mind, is that, okay, we all kind of wanted Hobbs to have that dominant run.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't feel like he had it, and I thought that was a kind of a bummer that he lost the belt. But if Wardlow's going to do it, then let him at least have one run where he starts crushing some big dudes, right?
Yeah.
Like actually today before this match, I've kind of been secretly, and no, this is gonna be controversial, but I've been secretly hoping to have the Ryback Goldberg rumored match happen at AEW. I don't know. I secretly. So I was fantasy booking in my head earlier today, and I was just like, man, it would be awesome if Wardlow had a run where he beat just these big. If you brought in a Ryback and you brought in a Goldberg and you had Wardlow beat just a bunch of big dudes, like beat Hobbs, beat Luchasaurus, beat just have him conquer the monsters of AEW. But that's clearly a direction that AEW is not going to go with Wardlow, and they did do a good job of highlighting his record. So he does have a great winning record, but I'll be honest, guys. Wardlow is a very perplexing situation right now.
Craig, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If Wardlow wins back the TNT belt, is it going to really feel like any kind of victory?
No, and that's the point. I think he needs to move on from the TNT title. And I talked to you about it earlier, SPD, and you were firmly against it. But I do really think that there needs to be some conversation about where, like, do we turn Wardlow heel at some point again? Do we move him back? And I know that you just cringed. I'm honestly I've even thought about, do you put him back with Max? And I know that seems like oh my God, this would never happen. But I feel like Wardlow was at his best in that kind of capacity. And I think that Max certainly, storyline wise, you could talk about, everybody's coming for him. Max could front some money and make it worthwhile. Wardlow's already proven his point to Max as far as that maybe Max has to treat him with a little bit more respect, right, in this go around. But clearly they don't seem to, and you said it really well, Mind, they don't seem to know what they're doing with him.
Yeah.
They don't. And I felt like the Wardlow breakout was, honestly, I felt like a kindergartner could have booked him being the huge star. I didn't think it would be hard to do, and they have found a way through what SPD has highlighted, the stop, go, that it doesn't feel like he has a purpose, and I can see it in his work. They are not pushing him in a way that makes me feel like they know what they see greatness right now.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, maybe he needs to get a little angrier. Maybe he needs to get a little bit of fire in his belly, and he looks at what happened with Arn and says, man, like, my compassion is what made me weak here, right? Me worrying about an old man getting beaten up had me lose my focus and lose my title. I need to move on. I don't know. I think that there needs to be a little bit more of an edge to Wardlow, because I don't see that fire in him right now. I don't.
Well, typically when there's somebody kind of get stale, they turn him heel, put him in a tag team, or put him in some kind of gimmick thing to redeem themselves. Yep, and
that's a good point.
I don't think turning Wardlow heel after will negate his whole journey from when he turned on Max. I think it would really kind of crush that. I've always wanted I've always wanted the Brian Cage Wardlow tag team, just because I think War Machine would sound like a great name, but that's cool.
That is cool, Mind. That is cool.
I love that name. Yeah. But do you think putting Wardlow in a faction, not necessarily MJF, but like putting him in some kind of Bullet Club Gold, They need another member or somebody.
Use some muscle. I mean, it's a good point, and I think that I listen to a lot of podcasts. My wife always jokes around that I always got a set of headphones in my ear because I love listening to different podcasts. And I've been listening more and more to Click This with Kevin Nash, and that's a guy that we talk about business. He knows the wrestling business. He's always been about business, and Wardlow could maybe learn a thing or two, like a pattern some of his career around Nash. Nash always did best when he was paired with Hall, right? Mm-hmm. When he was with Shawn Michaels, right? Yeah. Nash was always best when he was paired with other guys who were talkers, who had charisma, and Nash knew he could stay on top by being the big dog, right? Wardlow doesn't necessarily need to be cutting these big promos and getting trying to get people to like him. Just be cool, man. Just be the badass dude that we know you are. And I think you're onto something. If they don't turn him heel, which, hey, I guess that's me naturally always wanting people to turn heel.
You're going to get your wish soon. We'll talk about that later.
If they, I'm sorry, maybe that's just me going back to my old ways. But I think your point's a great one, Mind. I think that's a really, really good counter to my suggestion that, hey, man, maybe Wardlow's best when he's presented in a group setting, right? Maybe he's best in a partnership or a group setting. And AEW has some great potential opportunities there, right? I think that there's certainly some interesting. I think the Bullet Club Gold thing with Juice, Rockhard, Juice Robinson, and Jay White. I think those are two small guys who are great at talking, have a ton of charisma, are absolute workhorses. That's a great. That would be an awesome Wardlow as the muscle to those guys could certainly work. But I think that Wardlow being presented as the muscle to a smaller talker, high charisma guy, again, the Kevin Nash philosophy, I think that could do wonders for him because Wardlow's kind of a cool dude. You listen to him, we've talked to him. He is kind of got the big, sexy Kevin Nash vibe where he's just kind of chill. He's a chill guy. He's a laid-back dude who can go crazy in the ring. I think that's something that Wardlow should think about, right? And maybe even talk to Kevin Nash. I mean, I really think that, we are big fans of Wardlow here. I don't think that the TNT title is in his future. He needs to move on. I think that there's something – there needs to be a new movement for Wardlow going forward.
What about ROH? Having him do a tour of ROH?
I think he's bigger than ROH, personally. I think that he's bigger than ROH. Me personally. Mm-hmm. And you could counter by saying, you got guys like Samoa Joe and Claudio heavily invested into ROH, but those guys have a history with that company that Wardlow doesn't have, right?
Yeah, I think you keep the OG AEW guys in AEW. You don't do as much crossover as possible. Yeah. In my opinion, but I'm afraid. I mean, obviously, nostalgic. It would be so cool for his point, but I'm afraid we'll get some gimmick where he teams up with the Hardys for a match or something like that, where they're just kind of in limbo. But hey, I hope not. But I could see something like that happening, unfortunately. But I want to move on to the best match.
Wait, before we do that, SPD, I just want to tell you, congratulations on Luchasaurus getting this because honestly, you've said it from the beginning of the show. He's one of your favorite guys to watch in the ring. You've always talked about you think his offense is probably your one of your favorite. If you could have any offense, if you could be a pro wrestler, you would pick Luchasaurus. And let's give him some praise just real quick before we move on. Because, dude, there are very few guys who can make Wardlow look small. Yeah, Luchasaurus is a monstrous human being. The dude is jacked out of his mind. He looks like he's in incredible shape. His presentation with Christian is going over super well. That whole thing is going great for them, and I'm really happy for Luchasaurus. Who, let's be real, guys. This is a huge, huge thing for a guy in his career to have this opportunity. So, we did focus in on Wardlow and kind of the limbo that he's in, but certainly. There are bright things ahead for Christian Cage and Luchasaurus. Those two can't wait to see where that story goes.
Luchasaurus needs to be this unstoppable, unbeatable guy while Christian's going, ha ha ha.
Yes.
That's my belt.
Rub it in.
That's just everybody's delicious.
Yes.
Well, no one should be able to dethrone them with those two when it's two guys holding the belt. Like with Christian on the outside and Lucha's dominance in the ring.
Yes.
It's going to be impossible to dethrone.
Can't wait for the promos.
It's too bad that Luchasaurus isn't the TNT champion because obviously it's really Christian, right?
Yeah, congratulations, Christian. Well,
like I mentioned at the top here, it was we haven't seen Andrade in the ring since September 4th at All Out, and Buddy Matthews, we know his history. When seeing this match announced, I was like, okay, are we going to see some kind of post shenanigans with the LFO and the House of Black? Is Thunder Rosa going to join Andrade? So it's
interesting.
The House of Black versus LFO with Thunder Rosa, or how this was going to play out. But I think Andrade next to CM Punk got the biggest pop of the night, and the crowd was so over for him, and rightfully so. I mean, in a performance like tonight from Andrade, it shows how much we missed him in AEW, because if he puts on matches like this week in and week out, which he has been known to when he does get in those rings, those chances that we've seen, he's fantastic. And I mean, Buddy Matthews is no walk in the park either, man. Those two pairing was fantastic in my opinion. Both guys selling the injuries throughout the whole match.
Yes, glad you mentioned that.
Very, very good selling for both of them. And this was a physical, hard hitting match. And it started off with a bang. And man, I just can't get over the pop Andrade and the chant and just the in-ring work that he has. And I almost forgot about it. I remember him doing like these crazy top rope stuff and multiple spins when he was fighting Pac and other people. And I was like, man, this guy is really, really impressive. Yeah. And tonight his selling was on point. Not just the injury, but the moves that Buddy was hitting him with, and his overall presence in the ring, man. And to top it off, the figure eight to take the win. And blurring the lines, the figure eight was fantastic. Oh man, that was pretty special stuff.
I agree. No, I think you said it really, really well. There's not much more that I can even add, dude. You hit on all the things that I really want to talk about. I mean, those guys, both absolute workhorses in the ring. You know, I've known Andrade a lot longer than you, SPD, as far as watching his stuff in NXT and everything like that. And I've always known what the guy can bring. But again, I think that this was a great example of not just doing moves. These are both of these performers. Yeah, both of these guys are great storytellers, and they allow their in-ring work to actually, like you mentioned, really like pull the audience in. Great selling, and that's that's such an awesome art form. And in today's modern pro wrestling, where everybody just kind of wants to get in the kicks and the moves and the flips and everything, just really, really smart storytelling, and how much of a difference that makes in a match. These two work together really, really well. They both are incredible in-ring performers, and it was a joy to watch. It really was. There's not much more I can add. You said everything great as far as actual highlights of it, and I just wanted to say it's a pleasure watching those two guys wrestle. They did an incredible job.
They set the bar for collision match qualities moving forward, in my opinion.
Yes. Absolutely. For me, this was match of the night, and that says a lot because the main event was tremendous. I mean, I felt like the main event was great. This was because it's exactly that. It set the bar. This is Collision. And when the match was booked, I was already marking out. But this was such a great presentation for Andrade. This was the presentation that Andrade needed that we didn't get when Vicky brought him in, and there was all this. It seemed kind of weird, but he came in. Andrade was Andrade. He didn't have to spend 10 minutes taking his suit off. He came out. He had the nice Dark Order robe. He took off, and he was ready to go, and he did exactly that. Plus, they had a plug ready to go in storyline with House of Black. That not just the match itself. Both men told their stories in the ring, sold their injuries, back and forth. The crowd was into them, and then the end of the match, lights go out. House of Black. Are we now going to get LFO House of Black? What's going down? Roosh. And people were already, I think, chanting Roosh when they were teaming up on Andrade there. So it's going to be interesting.
That's going to be an awesome physical match. But
that's how you bring Andrade in.
AEW just tweeted 2 minutes ago that Andrade has a message for House of Black. I don't know if you hear.
I feel very happy.
Andrade is back.
And thank you, AEW fans. Thank you, Chicago. And the House of Black. See you in Canada.
See you in Canada, House of Black. So it's either Collision or Forbidden Door. So we'll see.
They've got his attention, and I think having that built-in purpose now for Andrade, not only just presenting him like they did, allowing him to feel like the star that he I think Andrade kind of walks with the natural. That's a guy who knows he's a star, right? Like Andrade just kind of has that. Like everybody, he doesn't struggle with confidence, right? That guy knows he does. That's why he doesn't. He's had his history of being a malcontent at times because he's like, dude, I'm bigger than this. I'm better than this. You treat me better than this, and so I think that now coming in, being presented like a star and having a clear purpose and direction with his character, it's fantastic. Right. It's exciting as a fan of his, and knowing that it's going to lead to him versus Malachi, who is another one of those guys who is a very smart storyteller in the ring, right? Like very intelligent worker. We just know that it's going to be more of this going forward, and that's really exciting stuff. I really love the presentation and the direction for both House of Black and Andrade going at it. It's going to be great. I love it.
They were cheering Andrade, and people are really starting to cheer Rush too, or Roosh. I call him Rush still. Roosh.
Yeah, so that's the one thing I want to ask you guys. I mean, yes, it's fun. AEW fans wrestling fans are supportive in general when you have someone return, from injury or a surprise debut. It's always, a pop, and then you get the character development. With this Andrade, it was being such a good reaction, and almost, especially with what he says, like, thank you fans, like it's seeming like he's leaning into that baby face.
Oh, for sure.
When LFO is so heavily heel with Roosh being, ruthless, and Preston Vance, and then Jose the assistant, like, I'm curious of what direction they're going to go after tonight's reaction.
But isn't that cool, though, that you might not even necessarily have to make that call? That's one of the things that makes AEW so cool. Look at Blackpool Combat Club can be heels one night, and they can be faces. And if the Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6 taught us anything, you could have just two popular wrestlers go at it, and you're just going to have people cheering on both sides. I mean, I'm a House of Black fan, and I'm also now this was the best Andrade. He won me back, and with Roosh is tremendous. Preston
Roosh
Vance
has been great. Yeah,
it's gonna be great. We are the ones that win. In this situation.
You're absolutely right, man. Like having fans be passionate and excited about your character. Even when you do good or bad, that's not a bad thing, I mean, like the blurring of the lines, bad guys being cool has been around since we were kids. NWO kind of helped change the game with some of that, right?
Stone Cold
and Stone Cold, right? Like I remember some of the stuff that he did was awful. He was an awful person at times, but
everyone hated The Rock until he turned heel. Everyone hated The Rock until he became The Rock.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with having a guy who gets cheers or pops in certain towns, or going against certain opponents, and then can be ruthless. You just mentioned the House of Black. Now, the theme of tonight's show of Collision is CM Punk, and he's going to be a perfect example of that too. There are going to be times in which he's presented where he will get booed. He will be the bad guy. And then there are going to be other towns and other situations where he's going to be very popular. So as long as you're getting a good reaction, as long as the fans are passionate, you could pull them and manipulate us fans in whatever way you want. I mean,
right.
Who'd have thought that MJF gets cheered, right? I mean, like that guy's an absolute scumbag.
Oh, Long Island?
Generational talent.
Yeah, he gets pops, right? So you allow these things to breathe as long as the characters feel like authentic, and that's going back to the Wardlow thing, right? Like as long as a guy feels like he's genuinely himself and is presented in a way that allows them to breathe, and I think that can go in the right way. It's just this is an example of that. I think that Andrade is the fans want to cheer the guy, right? Even though he's cocky and a bad guy, he can be potentially a bad guy. He's still going to get cheers. So yeah, absolutely, man. This match was, as you said, set the bar. But going forward, SPD Miro,
another one of your guys, bro.
Yeah, I mean,
he was really leaning into that hard cam, and I loved it. It looked like another one of those guys who was just happy to be back and just doing the right things for the people at home. And he seemed totally jacked up tonight and really happy to be back. I'm curious if this is going to be like a resurgence for those outcast kind of people with their new show of Collision, where they get more time to shine. These like Miro and Andrade and CM Punk, obviously, and hopefully we get Thunder Rosa sooner than later, but it just seemed like he was feeling the love and just excited to be back in the ring. And that's what you want as a fan, and that's what you want on your roster is like wrestlers just like geeked out and pumped out. And I'm glad this wasn't a pure squash, and Tony Nese did a fantastic job drawing, getting some mad heat for the crowd in order to really put Miro over more than,
instead of it just being Tony Nese versus Miro, like Tony Nese went out there and really stirred up the crowd. And he did a good job of getting heat, right? And then if you just wanted people to just Miro get it coming out, then the people are even more invested in his return, because now it's not only we get to see Miro, but now we get to see Miro kick the shit out of this guy.
And one of the greatest things to watch is Mark Sterling get his ass kicked. I mean, they go to it. It's a good go-to for AEW. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
it was pretty arm hair chilling when you hear the. It was like great, man. It was so great.
SPD, give that to us one more time.
I don't even remember the two.
I love it. My here comes. You guys are awesome, man.
I was hoping he was going to come out in a tank like he did at WrestleMania.
Oh, that was the best, one of the best entrances ever.
But he is the tank, He is the tank.
That's a good.
I love everybody was so glad to see him. It was such a great comeback. It's great to see him. I hope he goes on a tear, and I hope they have a plan for him.
Yeah, it's evident, right? This is one of those guys, man. Like it's so clear. He gets it. He gets wrestling. He gets wrestling fans. And again, like if you're Tony, you have to present this guy as special. He just commands that. He commands it when he's out there. The reaction that he gets, and like you said, SPD, he's just a pro's pro, and that's one of the things I like about a lot of what we saw tonight. It was just a lot of these guys know, like it was a very smooth show because there were a lot of great veterans on the show. They know how to ham it up to the crowd.
Yeah, right.
They know how to focus with the camera. I mean, Andrade, like they did a great job with the Andrade buddy match. Highlighting that these guys have like 30-something years in the business combined, and they were talking 34 years, right? Talking about how Andrade started when he was 14. When you have this type of stuff, and you have guys who are vets in the business who get it. Even Tony Nese, right? This is a guy who has been around the block. He was with WWE. He knows he knows how to like work a crowd. He knows how to play multiple angles, different types of characters. So it really, really worked. And Miro is a guy who, from the minute AEW signed him, I was geeked about it because I love the guy. He's super resilient.
Of course you were.
He's super resilient as a performer. To watch how this man transformed from Alexander Rusev essentially in NXT, where he literally would come out and break a board and be presented as a guy who couldn't communicate, he couldn't talk. They basically had him come out and just be this big brute who could break boards across his knee. From that like presentation of a character to be able to grow through Rusev Day to this. I mean, this is a guy who is super resilient and intelligent and creative. And as a fan, it's always a joy to root for him because he's constantly willing to like make slight changes to his character or complete transformations in order to continue to entertain. And that's one of the things I love. His career trajectory and arch has been awesome to watch. And I really think that like you said, I think that this is an opportunity where they need to present him as a big deal and allow him to have some monster runs. And we talked about the TNT title not feeling very important. It certainly did when it was around Miro's waist. I mean, that guy, God's favorite champion during that, like the whole God's favorite champion Redeemer gimmick that he pulled off was awesome storytelling and some of the most fun stuff that I watched. That was some of the best stuff of the TNT title ever. So I think that Miro is a guy, and again, we've seen this pattern play out throughout the show. This collision really has given a platform to performers like Miro and Andrade, that guys that kind of are big deal stars and need a platform for it. And unfortunately, Dynamite just wasn't enough. So I think this feels so much bigger than Rampage. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, this feels so much bigger than Rampage. It really dwarfs that show when it comes to overall like importance. Just off the first show, it feels like this is clearly going to be, either the A show or the 1A show. I mean, I get that Dynamite is the backbone of AEW, but for Collision's debut episode, I've already got a vibe that they want this to be a big,
part 2.
Yes, exactly right. And it's presented very differently. And again, like a guy like Miro coming out and dominating like he did sets the tone that, we see more of that on Saturdays. We're going to be happy, right? I think all of us will be happy.
Question for both of you. Given if they booked Miro to be the monster that he is, crushing fools, destroying people, obliterating people, what's his next goal? Because he also, I think the TNT has also been there, done that for Miro too.
Agreed.
But we have an international title, and Orange Cassidy's not long for it, or Samoa Joe.
I personally,
Samoa Joe.
I don't know, these heavy hitters in AEW, I want them to stay in AEW. No knock to Ring of Honor personally, but I think international title if you're talking gold. But honestly, I think you just keep having them go on this tear, have a couple mini feuds, and then I would love to see him feud with MJF down the line.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask.
I mean, not anytime soon. I'm thinking like 4 or 5 months from now.
Yep.
I'm fine with him. I think you're going to book Miro as an inaction type of person for the next few collisions, just to get some, ring rust per se, and dominant wins under the belt like he has in the past. And then maybe after one of his ass whoopings, someone comes out to really kind of start a feud. And then eventually, if they do either go directions for Intercontinental Championship, go for that. International, go for that. If not, then just go straight to MJF.
How's this? Miro crushes fools, and then he gets a match with Aaron Solo. QT likes what he sees. QT tries to get him to join up with him and Hobbs. Miro doesn't want this. It is not in my path. And now we start Hobbs versus Miro for a while.
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly give Hobbs a direction as well. And the matches that, that pairing, those guys would be incredible together. To your initial question, I think that Miro literally if you put him in the ring against Orange Cassidy, I think that could be, and you allow that to play out like I foresee it in my head, that could be a pretty dominating victory from Miro. And I think that Orange Cassidy could sell really well for Miro in a way that, it would almost look like he was breaking his back and so I just have that visual playing out, and it would be such a nice contrast from what the OC's run. Again, OC is a very lighthearted character, and he's had a lot of wins.
Yeah.
He's had a great championship reign. But it would take that title in a very different direction, which would be fun, right? You take it to a guy who is a hulking brute of a man versus OC. So that would be really cool, and I think that could play out really, really well. And again, the crowd would be super hot for that, because there's a segment of the fan base that loves OC, and there's a segment of the fan base that hates OC, and then there's a segment of the fan base that would boo Miro because he's a bad guy, and then there's a segment of the fan base that would love Miro because he's like we're talking about, he's awesome to watch, right? So the crowd would be super hot for that kind of match.
Right.
I would foresee that, and to go back to your Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior thing in mind, there's nothing wrong with having two super popular guys go against each other.
Yeah.
That said, I do agree with SPD long term. I think that Max has had a title run that would benefit from going against a badass, believable, like Miro going after. The thing about like what we saw with the Pillars match was that really, like, I don't think that any of us really believed at the end of the day that any of those guys were going to beat Max.
Well,
right?
Some of us wanted Darby, but
Darby,
I don't remember who that was. It wasn't me, I don't think.
I love Darby. Right? But Miro as a contender or challenger to MJF is a very different thing than Darby, right? Let's be real, right? Like Miro is, especially if he went on a run like you talk about him having mind, if you give him more credibility, you build up that record, you allow him to dominate some folks, and then you have him ultimately want the gold and challenge MJF. I mean, it would be a very cool visual to see Miro standing across the ring from MJF. I mean, MJF can talk a lot, but is he going to have that kind of mouth when you have a guy who's that much bigger than Max staring him in the face?
And that whole Redeemer angle too.
Man.
Yeah.
God's favorite champion. I mean,
God has chosen me to crush the rats. You know,
and he's so good at it, bro. I love that. I love those promos. Again, intelligent, like promos from Miro, and I think that would be money, man. If you told me that there was a pay-per-view tomorrow where MJF was going against Miro, I'd buy it right now. Right? There's no doubt about it. I'd want to see that. So I think So I think both of those are very realistic options. Yeah. We'll see where they go. I mean, I'm with you, SPD, long term. To see MJF, we've seen him go against Adam Cole. A lot of guys similar to him, right, as far as size-wise or smaller. To have him run into a train wreck, and that could be ultimately the guy's Achilles heel, because we saw what happened when he went against Wardlow, right? So I would love that. I would love a long-term build to Miro challenging MJF, and I think everybody around the world would be you'd go into that pay-per-view wondering if MJF was going to lose, right? And that's needed.
If you do that closer to 2024, with all the 2024 talk, and just imagine, MJF comes out, he's talking smack, and all of a sudden you hear
exactly.
Oh, the pop would be tremendous.
Boom.
And Max would sell it like $1 million. His facial expressions would be incredible. Like he'd look like he should have.
Of course.
You'd be wondering if he had the drizzling shits down the leg.
You need to use a scarf to wipe up his drizzling shits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, well, SPD.
What's going kind of full circle, which is cool, was when we went to All Out, Sky Blue was there as essentially an extra, and the crowd was going wild for her. And that's when the first of us saw Sky Blue, and that's kind of when she first really joined AEW, essentially. And she's been on a tear lately, and I would say not just the last week, because she had a hell of a week this last week. But over the past few months, some of her in-ring stuff has been very, very impressive. And now picking up a huge pin over Ruby, and an awesome way to finish off. A great addition to the women's roster. And Willow, this pairing is great. It's a lot of fun. Willow
pure baby
started
face.
Things off strong with that huge shoulder tackle into Ruby Soho, who smacked her head on the railing. If you guys didn't see that, definitely check that out. It was like brutal to start of this match, but this whole show was a babyface 101. It was a great show, other than the Wardlow match. It's like, I got to give the people what everyone wants, and so this one impressed me, honestly. Like, I felt like there's chemistry between all four of these women, these ladies, the whole time, and I almost wanted more to happen throughout this match. I wanted more storyline. I wanted more than just kind of essentially a clean finish, and beyond. And so I know they've been going back and forth for a while now with the Outcasts, and trading places with Sky Blue, Willow, and anyone in between. So does this kind of halt that a little bit, or is just another chapter to the bigger book of it? But it was a well wrestled match, and all four ladies, did a fantastic job. And I can't knock anything on it. I mean, obviously we preach positivity, but I got to give props to Sky Blue for really standing out the most in this match at all four in her hometown. Yeah. And you could feel the emotion both on Wednesday and tonight of her in the ring, of just like, wow, essentially like I made it.
I always love,
she earned that.
Yeah, I love that, and I always love that AEW gives these performers those moments. AEW does seem to really lean into the hometown thing with a lot of their performers, and allow them to have that moment where their home city cheers them. I don't know. I've always liked that about AEW. It's very fitting, and like you said, just happy for Sky Blue. It's just one of those things. Like, just as a human being, you're just like, you can see it meant a lot to her, and that's genuine. That's just cool. Like, your mom's there. I mean, you could just figure, you could be like, okay, you just think about, like, if that happened to me or somebody that I cared about or a friend or whatever, you'd be pumped for them. So just really cool that she had that moment. And it was done in a very believable way, her winning. I think that, like, this is, with Jamie Hayter's injury and kind of like, I think it opened up the door for Willow Nightingale and Sky Blue to kind of slide into what was previously the DMD's in Hayter's spot. And what's happening nicely here is, they're getting an opportunity to prove themselves as stars, right? And this is now potentially building and brightening the stars of two young athletes on the roster. Pure baby faces too. I mean, just so good at being a baby face. Willow is pure energy out there. She brings something unique to the division that I really like. A size and strength aspect of her her ability in ring, plus a kind of almost like a Bayley-esque. Now everybody thinks Bayley is a heel, but her early days, just how pure joy and happy, she was a pure baby face, just like the purest of pure baby faces. And I think that that this pairing works really well, because I've been telling you about it for a long time now, SPD. The Outcasts are one of my favorite things on AEW television.
They're the best thing going in the women's division.
I really enjoy their presentation. I love how those girls are working right now. And so, you have such admittedly younger, newer performers, pure baby faces going against veteran performers that are killing it as heels. It's working really well. I thought this, was a great story in front of a hot crowd. I agree with you. I think that there's more to come. I don't think that this ends it by any stretch. But I just want to highlight, I mean, I know I'm happy for the victors, but again, every time I get a chance, because we don't do these as often as we used to, the Outcasts, I really hope the AEW continues to run with that. I think that those girls are crushing it. They're doing a really, really good job. Toni Storm as a champion, I think is she's getting the run that she deserves after how she kind of very classily handled the interim run, the interim thing that she had. And I think that this is the best Ruby Soho we've seen in AEW, and it's not really close, right? I think she's really enjoying it. You could tell she's super into it. She's hamming it up. When she brought out the Saraya face sign the other week, I loved it.
Flat Sriracha.
Yeah, I think that clearly Ruby's really into it. She feels comfortable. Because sometimes Ruby can, you wonder if, I don't know if she feels super comfortable as a babyface. She can do both, but I really think she's killing it right now as a heel. And she's always better in a group setting. She's doing. I think the Outcasts are absolutely some of the best stuff on TV, and I hope that they continue to run with this for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look how far the women's division has come,
dude.
And it's like, and again, it's kind of like the Will Washington thing. I mean, when Sriracha came in, or Sriracha, when she came in, all right, I'll call her Sriracha because she spiced up.
She's spicy. Yeah, she did.
And it's again, I think like the locker room, the AEW locker room as a whole is like this, but definitely the women's division is they're there to lift each other up. And I think that, despite the Brit and Thunder, even both of them have the same heart, the same desire. And I think the same thing with
a great
Sriracha
point,
and everybody. And like you see, look just looking, if you go back and look at old Sky Blue matches like on Dark and whatnot versus how she's been looking the last several weeks, this girl has been doing indie shows, and Willow's been doing indie shows. They've been everywhere when they're not on AEW. They've been doing matches, and they've been tremendous. They've grown so much, and you can feel it. AEW, they're strapping rockets to Willow and Sky Blue. They believe in them, like what Tony Khan said. He handpicked Willow to represent AEW at that women's tournament in Japan. And originally, she wasn't supposed to go over on Mercedes, but she did, and she's
a huge win, man.
That's such a great moment. I mean, historic. She's the first New Japan women's strong champion.
Huge.
Also, to beat Mercedes Moné, the star that she is. I mean, that's a big deal, bro.
And the Outcasts, you know, Ruby and Tony, they're lifting Sky Blue and Willow up. They're loving it. And this is the best Tony's been. Tony's such a great heel champion. Ruby's doing great. This whole feud, and again, I don't think it's putting a kibosh on it. I think it just goes bigger from here because you still have Sheeta involved. You still have Britt, and Hayter's going to return. The one thing that I was hoping would happen, but I think it almost would be like putting gravy on an already delicious biscuit or something, is I was waiting for the Thunder to come to show up. But I think it's too soon. You can't play all your cards in the first hand.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Well, and I know that this is going to feel sacrilegious, and I'm asking you this because I know what SPD will say. But you've known Thunder for a while, and you're a big fan of hers. Would you potentially have her join the Outcasts?
A lot of people have been saying that, and a lot of the logic I've seen in their arguments are kind of weak. And here's the thing, I understand why, because people are really drawing a line in the sand between Thunder and Britt. Like the whole thing is you can't have Thunder and Britt together or whatever, and that but it doesn't make sense because the Outcasts, unless, all right, asterisk, because I just thought of something, but you can't have Thunder be an outsider because she is an OG. She's also. I mean, granted, she came up through NWA, but if you really look at it, she has been such a part of AEW as well.
I agree, right? I agree. And as a huge Thunder advocate, I would say absolutely she makes sense as an original, and she's somebody who I love, who I feel like has built the foundation of this division. But she could even argue that her own locker room made her feel like an outsider.
But it wasn't the whole locker room. It was a few people, and we don't know how much they played that up.
There were a lot of fans that turned on Thunder and said some really ugly things about her during her injury thing. I think it would be interesting.
You can cheer her or boo her.
Yeah, and that said, right? Like, I know she has an active role on Busted Open, and maybe it makes like you might want her to stay a baby face for that. And Thunder is an awesome baby face. I'm not trying to turn one of the best.
She also does a lot with the charity too.
Exactly, she does. Yeah. That is true. But there are like Thunder can be a pretty badass chick in the ring. Mm-hmm. And the more that you guys are talking about the Outcast storyline continuing on, like, you just start wondering if they start having so many enemies, like can only 3 of them keep them all at bay? I don't know. Especially with Saraya not being as active in the ring, it would make sense to add some reinforcements to their group. Maybe
I agree, but not Thunder. Yeah, I agree. But there's other potential prospects besides Thunder Rosa.
Who would be some that you would pick?
Well, you have Marina Shafir. Granted, I'm not a big fan, but whatever. I think that's somebody that Bryan Danielson needs to take under his wing, bring her to Blackpool Combat Club, turn her into more of a Shayna Baszler type character. You also have there's some indie wrestlers out there that could pop back in. Mandy Sachs, is she going to get back into wrestling? She's a free agent. There are some potential people you could bring in to kind of fill those spots.
Serena Deeb would fit pretty well with that group too.
She's former WWE. Right? She would fit in great. But I think I really, really think that one of the best stories that they could tell is Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa being forced
putting their differences
team
aside.
together.
That's the story that SPD is really rooting for. I know,
because you have them facing each other, and they know they hate each other, but they know they got to work together to stop the Outcasts. And I really think that's the way to go.
Makes sense.
Thunder Rosa, you could argue Thunder Rosa is the women's locker room version of CM Punk, because she does have a lot of people turned on her. A lot of people didn't know who to believe. The dirt sheets are crazy, but I mean, you look at the people again. She and Britt Baker both want the women's division to succeed, and I think they could put their personal differences aside. Shoot personal differences aside.
I would agree.
Together.
At the end of the day, they both want the best for this division and this company and this division. And I think they both go about it in very somewhat different ways. But at the end of the day, they both can be key mentors in this locker room. They're both different personalities, right? They both could be really big, different mentors for younger talents. And I think that is the story that would have a lot of us eating it up, was seeing. I would agree with you. It's a natural story, and I would love that.
I think you guys are kind of like me, because this is, people don't realize that there's people like us out there that can be a DMD and Thunder Rosa fan.
Absolutely,
I think
I love both
almost
of them.
People keep pushing this either or. It's like
either or, no.
Oh, I love both. I think they're great.
Well said, Mind. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love both. I know SPD and I have had some of our favorite moments in AEW history are because of both of those women. So we have nothing but good things to say about either one of them. Both have been incredibly kind to us in person when we've met them. And, as far as performers, there's not much to say other than, I like that Thunder has that her offense is still, even with all the new people who have come on AEW, all the new faces, Thunder Rosa's offense, as far as the women's division go, still my favorite offense in anybody. And as far as I love watching a Thunder Rosa match. I love her fire. I think she's incredible. We've talked about it tonight. Really, we've emphasized a lot about selling, because when we talked about Thunder is incredible at that. So I think that there is a place for Thunder Rosa in this, and I hope that we do get to see her on Collision and be featured a little bit more. It'll be interesting to see, right? I think that you're right. She certainly could. I think that if Thunder Rosa could hear me now, I would tell her there's a lot that she could learn from CM Punk's return tonight. As far as how to handle that, embrace whether you want to cheer me or boo me. That's fine. I am who I am. Throughout all this stuff that has happened to her, she should hold tight to I am me, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Mind, you said it really well. This woman has given so much of her life to charity, to helping other people achieve their dreams. She's worked her ass off to try to help other people. And if you don't like me, if you think that I'm inauthentic, I don't care. I really don't care. You don't know me. So I think that Thunder Rosa could take a little bit of page out of Phil's book tonight and approach it with that. And I think it would do wonders for her character going forward. And it will allow her to then approach Britt as an equal, in the sense that Britt doesn't care if you Britt gets a mixed reaction all the time. She gets people who cheer people who boo her. Britt gets a ton of criticism. People out there chirp all the time about Britt, how she can't wrestle, she has to have a thick skin. They both could be presented as equals in that way, that one's they're not pandering to the audience. So I like it. I think that it's really fun for me here to be talking to you guys about the women's division with so much excitement from both of you guys. When SPD, I remember during the infancy of this show, I would have to drag that out of you. Because there's a lot of
segments that I would just skip.
Yeah, and admittedly, you would just be like, "Man, I want it to be good. I want the women's division to be fun, but I'm struggling with it." And to see where this division is now, I think that it's come such a long way, and it's exciting to think that it's only going to keep getting better. Mind, the stuff that you talked about, I think that there's prospects for this to get even more fun down the road. So I'm loving it.
Once Collision gets going, we need women's tag belts. Bring Allie bring the Bunny and Penelope back. Or I guess Penelope, I don't know, but bring some more folks in. Bring the Renegade twins back. Renegades.
Yeah, they've been fun to watch, and they've been featured a little bit. Before we talk about the main event real quick, I one of two things I want to Thunder. And obviously being the babyface, I would love for her to be the ultimate wild card in a team on team, Survivor Series, as I said before.
Yeah.
Or, which is, not the norm for SPD, is a double swerve. Come out to a huge pop, save Britt, go face to face like they're gonna, save, and then turn on Britt right then and there, like the double swerve. Like she helped save them, but then turn on her right there. So a double swerve.
Did Sheeta get you when she did that one where it looked like she was joining the Outcast and not? I mean, was there even a second where you doubted?
A little bit, yeah. A little
For
bit,
me, no. For me, no.
Yeah. Because there was that moment I was like, "What are you doing, Sheeta? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And then nope.
Yeah. Well,
SPD, strong. We're diving deep into this collision, but I mean, this is, we talked about it at the beginning of the show, but I loved when the crowd was chanting CMFTR, and once again, to piggyback the commentator team, doing a great job selling how they were keeping Punk on the sidelines, keeping him, does he have that ring rust per se, or is he nervous, or, all that stuff. So he did kind of seem that way a little bit at first, but I'm sure it's part of the whole gimmick and selling.
Yeah.
But it was so great when Joe and him came face to face for the first time in the ring. Like, I was just anticipating that pop, and then it delivered on all aspects on that. The match itself, I mean, yes, we talked earlier, Andrade match, in-ring stuff was by far the best match of the night. This one was like one of the most fun to watch just because of the back and forth and obviously the anticipation of the Punk return. But you have the guys that carry the match, like Dax the Axe, man. The guy carried the whole match, in my opinion, kept the flow going, delivering brutal chops nonstop. And then I still, another one of those things, I hope Collision does this in the future, where they give their main event that 30-minute spot. Like on Dynamite, you're looking at 10 minutes sometime. Build Collision to be a pay-per-view quality match, which we do get at Dynamite's time to time, but build the match to make it be a big, good match and give
big
us quality main events.
Kind of like kind of learning from like the UFC model, right? Where like you have a nice undercard, but you build up to like getting that huge main event and making the main event feel like a big deal. Putting your best fighters, putting those top guys on at that time slot, and giving them that platform, giving them the time. I mean, and these guys, I mean, the workhorses in this match, you have, I mean, obviously Joe and Punk, like those guys have the longevity of being that, but like, man, Rock Hard Juice Robinson, Jay White, those guys can go, like those guys can go. And I'm a huge FTR guy. I love myself. Dax, like you said, man, just an absolute workhorse and so smart. That's one of the things, like, I always go back to is I love the performers that are like, that know how to bring a crowd into a match, know how to tell a story. You said it, like built a story around like Punk being, is he going to be able to have any ring rust? Is it going to cost us the match type of thing? The storytelling. Yeah, exactly. And Dax is such a workhorse in the ring, bro. I mean, I love watching them go. Mine, what was your takeaway from this match? Because I mean, we talked a lot about the build up of it earlier on in the show, but the match itself, what was your takeaway?
Well, CM Punk at the beginning of this show wrote a very, very big check, and it cleared because in this match because he definitely delivered. And exactly like you said, the whole story, though, does he still have it? He tries to do the good go to sleep. There's so much storytelling in this match, and you touched on it. But in a match where you have CM Punk returning, Samoa Joe, Switchblade Jay White, and Dax Harwood, to me, the two MVPs were Cash and Juice. To me, they were the MVPs. This is the best I've ever seen Cash wrestle ever, and he's always been tremendous.
Better,
but he and Juice.
I love Juice. I didn't know much about Juice until his run here in AEW, and I'm loving it.
I didn't like him when he first debuted. When he was taking himself more seriously than he should, I was like, I don't like this guy. I saw him on Dark a lot, and I was just like, no, this guy, I don't care for this guy. His something with his face. He looks like a goat, like that. Something just bothered me about him. But now he's been so over ever since joining with Jay White. He's so over the top, and he's a Ricky Starks. What you gonna do? that all the kind of stuff.
Kind of gives me Brian Pillman vibes.
Well,
really
okay,
does.
all right.
Yeah.
Did you catch that? What's his name? William Noddington. Who's the commentator?
Nigel McGuinness.
Nigel called him Pillman at one point. It was a slip.
That's wild, man.
That was
that's
a slip.
Wild.
It got real quiet in commentary, and like he called him Pillman. He goes, "Can Pillman get in the
hair?" I mean, everything about the guy. His actions,
the eyes,
like just the spazziness of him. And Pillman is a guy who he had a short run in wrestling, but it will be remembered forever from those who had a chance to watch him. Just because he's one of those guys who just was bigger than life. And Juice gives me some of those vibes. It's a compliment that Nigel, who one of my favorite ROH guys, kept me going through some of the ROH years. I love Nigel McGuinness. I think that it's kind of cool that he saw the same things that I'm seeing because, and again, it's wild to say that, mine. Like you said, when you have again Jay White, I told SPD when he came here. Jay White has an international reputation as being a big star. You have a guy like Joe, who I think all of us agree. Every time we get to watch Joe wrestle is an absolute pleasure. The guy is one of the more badass performers in wrestling, and you always feel like his matches are real. Anytime I watch Joe, I always I get taken back to feeling like a kid again, where I didn't know about that this was a scripted and all that. When I watch Joe wrestle, it's like he wants to win, he wants to hurt you. There's a sense of urgency in his matches and a purpose in his fighting that I always have loved. You have all this stuff going on, and for you to say that about Cash and Juice is a huge thing.
I mean, do you guys agree? I mean, Cash was tremendous tonight too. Cash was just he was taking bumps, he was giving bumps, he was and right at the end that final spot when I legit thought CM Punk was gonna pass out with and all of a sudden
that was a good finish. Yeah,
with that finish, he knocks him here, and then Dax comes in. I almost feel like they were trying to let Juice and Cash shine the most. To me, they were the MVPs.
Wow, okay.
And it wouldn't surprise me knowing the mentality of a lot of these guys that are in it, right? Very business oriented, right? Let's give these guys the rub, so to speak, right? Punk is already the established guy. Joe's already the established guy. Switchblade, everybody knows.
Yeah.
Using their platform to give those guys kind of a little bit more of a little shine was nice, mine. And it's kind of cool to hear you say that. I know SPD right away. You're over the years of me telling you how awesome FTR are, and then getting you on board with FTR. Now that you love FTR, having you be a part of that. I know you've always been a huge Dax guy, and I think that Dax does a lot of he's a very smart guy, and you could tell on his podcast and some of the stories, you get the glimpses of the behind the scenes stuff. He's really big on story. The match is always telling a story, and he likes planning matches and thinking things through.
Right.
I think that, when you pair him up with a guy like CM Punk, I mean, I hope that CM FTR is not a one night thing. I think that trio has some serious, that run could be a lot of fun, guys, and they could lead to some really cool stuff. And ultimately it could end up taking us down the road to, them going after Trios Gold, going after the Bucks and Kenny would be a lot of fun, man. I
CM FTR versus House of Black.
Ooh. That would be good.
Right? Right? I mean, ultimately there's a lot of, I think that the good thing about bringing Punk back with FTR is, it allows Punk to be on screen, to have purposeful matches without always having to be singles. You want him a little bit of the MJF model where there's a lot to like about Punk, and he can bring ratings and things like that without always having him to wrestle. Right. And so allowing him in this stage to be in the main event and have Dax the Axe, be in the machine in there, Cash carrying it worked. SPD. Go ahead.
I think that you need to, looking at what we saw tonight is every one of those guys that return, Andrade, Miro, and CM, they have to be featured on Collision at least the next 3-4 weeks in a row. I don't like when AEW does that on Dynamite where they're like, oh, Lance Archer's back, and then he's gone again for months. It's like you have like this return, and then it's all radio silent. Like for Collision to be Collision, you got to keep these guys, keep pushing them, the return. And so I'm very curious of how they're going to be doing. Like, are they going to announce matches for Collision on Collision like they do on Dynamite, or are they going to wait till Dynamite to announce Collision matches like as a continuation? Because I know they announced a bunch of matches for Dynamite coming up, and you would want to keep pushing your new show as well. So I don't know. I'm very curious of how
the more we think about this stuff, man, like
show is going to be.
I mean, like I know that the brand, like having a firm brand split is tough, but like they do have the roster for it. I do think that they have a big enough roster with enough guys that deserve TV time that like it could make sense. I know that like, you know, it would be great to see FTR on Wednesdays and Saturdays, right? It would, but like if you start looking at like, okay, well, Ricky Starks could be a Dynamite. Ricky Starks feels like a Dynamite personality, right?
Yeah.
Like Adam Cole, you could build a show on Dynamite that like you start to you could pick some stars. Like, okay, the Dynamite is the show where you have Kenny Omega, you have the Elite, you know, you have Adam Cole, Britt Baker. You have some. You could do that,
right?
But it's hard because, like you said, mind you almost want to be able to see everybody as much as possible. Yeah. You don't want to put yourself in a corner, but they definitely do have. It feels like they have the roster to support it,
and you don't have to have a hard split. You know, it could just like you could have a quick promo, from CM Punk and FTR on Dynamite that sets up whatever they're going to do.
That's a good point.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
that's a good point,
man. Do something to promote your match on Saturday.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. It could be more like they could. It doesn't have to be like firmly announced or like an actual thing where you draft them and all that stuff. But like, Tony could kind of play it where he's featuring more personalities on Wednesdays and featuring more personalities on Saturday, like splitting them a little bit naturally. That does make sense. I kind of do like the more like allowing it to play out, slow play it.
There's more show real estate now, and it's in a good spot, and so you have the opportunity to showcase more people. But I don't think you necessarily have to designate them to one show or the other, especially like MJF. I mean, you want MJF to be able to feud with everybody. You want him to come on Saturday and be pissed that he's here on a Saturday where he should be having
wasting my weekend with you guys.
Wasting my weekend on a Saturday in this shithole.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing.
You're right.
You want him to do that kind of stuff, but you don't want to limit him to just those Saturdays when if he's feuding with somebody that
being in Cleveland would be awful enough on a Wednesday, but I have to be here on a Saturday, you know, like doing something like that would be great. You're right. That is, I have to say, like in the end, guys, you know, whatever direction that they go in tonight certainly was an incredible start to the Collision era. I think that they really knocked it out of the park. I'm excited for fans to watch this show.
Sure.
I think that like if they continue to lean into what they have here, they could really. This could be exactly what AEW needed. This could be what kind of a jump start, kind of push them in a new direction. I'm really geeked to see where it goes from here.
Agree. Well, you guys, Collision a success. As we wrap it up, what letter grade would you give Collision first episode?
You want me to start? Considering it's its first time,
both of y'all?
I give it an A.
Yeah,
I give it an A.
Yeah, I have nothing bad to say about this show at all. I mean, I'd give it an A as well. I think across the board, huge fan of what they did.
Everyone.
I would
say A+ just because always room for a little bit more.
If there was Thunder on the show,
in the Tokyo Dome with Thunder Rosa, then I would give it A+.
Right. Yes. Yep. But no, I
gotta work hard for that AP.
A solid A. I mean, firm. I'm pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed this show and the overall presentation of what they put together tonight. Really, really pleasantly.
You're right. Absolutely right, man. Boys, man, it's been
let's wrap her up.
All right. Collision, #1 show back on. Saturday Night Wrestling is back, baby. AEW. Thank you,
guys.
Good
to chat with you guys. Thanks for making time with us.
Saturday night for fighting.
Saturday